Machiavelli says, never trust someone who does this at work. In the marble halls of Renaissance Florence, where betrayal was currency and loyalty a luxury few could afford, Niccolò Machiavelli observed something that would echo through 5 centuries of human ambition. He watched, he learned, he wrote, and what he discovered about power, about trust, about the masks we wear in the corridors of authority, it will chill you to your core. Because in every American office, in every corporate tower stretching toward the sky, in every meeting room where decisions shape destinies, Machiavelli's ghost walks among us. He sees what you see, the smiles that don't reach the eyes, the handshakes that feel like contracts with the devil, the colleagues who speak of teamwork while sharpening their knives. But there's one behavior, one single act that Machiavelli identified as the ultimate red flag. A warning sign so clear, so unmistakable, that anyone who ignores it deserves their inevitable downfall. Today, I'm going to show you what that behavior is. Rule 1. Never trust someone who always agrees with authority in public, but criticizes them in private. Machiavelli called them the two-faced courtiers. In Renaissance Italy, they were the nobles who bowed deepest before the prince, then whispered poison in the shadows. In modern America, they're your colleagues who nod enthusiastically in every board meeting, then spend their lunch breaks dissecting every decision the boss made. Watch them carefully. Listen to their words. In the conference room, they're the first to say, "Absolutely great idea," and the last to offer genuine input. They've mastered the art of visible agreement. Their heads bob like metronomes. Their notebooks fill with meaningless scribbles that look like diligent note-taking, but contain nothing of substance. But step into the break room, corner them by the coffee machine. Suddenly, the mask slips. Can you believe what Sarah said in there? Completely out of touch. This company has no idea what it's doing. If I were in charge, things would be different. This is not healthy skepticism. This is not constructive criticism shared with trusted colleagues. This is something far more dangerous. This is the behavior of someone who has made a calculated decision. They will never take responsibility for anything that goes wrong, but they will position themselves to claim credit for anything that goes right. They agree in public to avoid conflict. They criticize in private to build alliances. They're playing both sides of every coin, every decision, every relationship. And Machiavelli knew that such people are not just untrustworthy, they're actively dangerous. Rule 2. They reveal their true nature through micro-betrayals. Here's what Machiavelli understood about human nature that most people miss. Betrayal isn't usually one dramatic moment. It's 1,000 small compromises. A series of micro-betrayals that build momentum until they become unstoppable. The person who always agrees in public but criticizes in private, they're practicing. Every whispered complaint is a rehearsal for something bigger. Watch how they handle confidential information. You'll notice they have a curious relationship with secrets. They collect them like coins, storing them up for some future transaction you can't see coming. They remember everything you tell them. But more importantly, they remember what you tell them not to tell others. And somehow, mysteriously, those very secrets have a way of finding their way to exactly the people who shouldn't hear them. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but don't say I told you, but I trust you'll keep this between us, but these are not the words of someone sharing information. These are the words of someone weaponizing it. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are so simple of mind and so much dominated by their immediate needs that a deceitful person will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived. The person who agrees publicly but criticizes privately has identified you as someone ready to be deceived. They're feeding you information, yes, but they're also gathering intelligence about how you react, what you value, where your loyalties lie. Every conversation is an interview. Every confidence shared is data collected. And you're giving them everything they need to know about how to destroy you when the time comes." Rule 3. They never take ownership of their criticism. Here's where their strategy becomes crystal clear. When pressed about their private complaints, they deflect. Always. I'm not saying I agree with this, but people are saying there's a lot of concern in the office about. I've heard from multiple sources that. Notice the language. Notice the distance they create between themselves and their opinions. They're not critics. They're just messengers. They're not spreading dissent. They're just reporting what they've heard. This linguistic gymnastics serves two purposes. First, it allows them to plant seeds of doubt without taking responsibility for growing them. If confronted, they can claim they were simply sharing information, not making accusations. Second, it creates the illusion that their views are widely held. By saying people are saying instead of I think, they make their isolated opinion sound like a consensus. Machiavelli understood that this kind of person is fundamentally weak. They lack the courage to stand behind their convictions in public, and they lack the integrity to keep their doubts to themselves in private. But weakness in the wrong hands becomes its own form of power. Because while you're trying to work with them honestly, they're building a shadow organization of whispered alliances and shared grievances. They're creating an underground network of people who feel smart and informed because they're part of the inner circle of complainers. And when the moment comes when they need leverage over you, over your boss, over the organization itself, they'll have it. They'll have it because they've been preparing for years. Rule 4. They thrive during organizational chaos. Watch what happens when your company goes through a rough patch, when layoffs loom, when leadership changes, when uncertainty creeps through the hallways like fog. Most people retreat. They focus on their work. They try to provide stability in unstable times. But the person who agrees publicly and criticizes privately, they come alive. Suddenly, they're everywhere. Having quiet conversations in empty conference rooms, scheduling coffee meetings with people they never talked to before, offering comfort and understanding to colleagues who are scared and vulnerable. I know this is hard. I've been worried about the same things. You're not crazy to feel this way. A lot of us do. Maybe it's time we all started looking out for ourselves. They position themselves as the voice of reason in unreasonable times, the truth teller in an organization full of lies, the brave soul willing to say what everyone else is thinking. But here's what Machiavelli knew. Chaos doesn't reveal character. Chaos reveals strategy. The person who seems to thrive during difficult times isn't necessarily resilient or wise or courageous. They might just be someone who has been waiting for the perfect moment to implement a plan they've been developing for years. Every private criticism was preparation. Every whispered doubt was investment. Every secret shared was the placement of a chess piece on a board you didn't even know you were playing on. And now, when the organization is vulnerable, when people are scared, when traditional authority structures are weakened, now is when they make their move. Rule 5. They never build anything, only tear down. Here's the most telling characteristic of all. In all those private conversations, in all those whispered criticisms, in all those moments of supposed honesty and truth-telling, have you ever heard them propose a solution? Have you ever heard them say, "Here's what I think we should do instead"? Have you ever seen them take initiative to fix the problems they love to identify? The answer is no, and it's no for a very specific reason. Building something requires commitment. Creating solutions requires taking responsibility. Fixing problems requires standing behind your ideas and accepting accountability for the results. The person who agrees publicly but criticizes privately has no interest in any of that. Their power comes from destruction, not creation. Their influence comes from tearing down other people's ideas, not building their own. Machiavelli wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." But the person we're discussing has chosen a third path. They want to be needed. Not needed for their skills or their vision or their leadership. Needed as a source of information. Needed as a sympathetic ear. needed as someone who understands the real situation when everyone else is buying into illusions. They make themselves indispensable, not through competence, but through conspiracy. And that's why they never offer solutions. Solutions would end the problems that make them valuable. Solutions would eliminate the chaos that gives them power. Solutions would create stability that makes their whispered wisdom unnecessary. They need things to be broken. They need people to be frustrated. They need the organization to be perpetually one step away from crisis. Because that's where they live. That's where they thrive. That's where they're most dangerous. But here's what Machiavelli also knew. Every strategy has a counter-strategy. Every weakness can be exploited. Every manipulator can be outmaneuvered. The person who agrees publicly but criticizes privately has made a fundamental error in their approach. They've confused tactics with strategy. They've built their entire power base on one simple assumption that you won't recognize what they're doing. But now you do. Now you can see the pattern. The public agreement that means nothing. The private criticism that means everything. The careful collection of secrets and grievances. The way they position themselves during chaos. The absence of solutions in all their problem-focused conversations. And once you see it, you can respond to it. Not with confrontation. Confrontation is what they expect. Confrontation gives them the opportunity to play victim, to claim they were just trying to help, to redirect attention away from their behavior and onto your reaction. Instead, respond with strategic awareness. When they agree with you in public, note it, but don't trust it. When they criticize others in private with you, listen, but don't participate. When they offer you information about what people are saying, thank them and verify independently. Most importantly, never give them information they can weaponize later. Never share your doubts, your frustrations, your concerns about leadership or colleagues or organizational direction. Because you now understand what Machiavelli understood 500 years ago, the person who collects complaints is not your friend. They're building an arsenal, and someday they plan to use it. The Renaissance is over. The marble halls of Florence are tourist attractions now, but human nature remains unchanged. In every office, in every organization, in every place where ambition meets opportunity, there walks among us someone who smiles in meetings and schemes in shadows. Someone who agrees in public and criticizes in private. Someone who has mistaken manipulation for intelligence and confusion for power. Machiavelli saw them coming 5 centuries ago. Now you can see them too. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Because in the game of power, awareness is only the first move. The real game begins when you decide how to play. And remember what Machiavelli wrote in his final letter. I desire nothing more than to see our country delivered from this barbarism. The barbarism he spoke of wasn't war or poverty or political chaos. It was the corruption of trust, the weaponization of relationship, the transformation of human connection into strategic advantage. In your workplace, in your career, in the professional relationships that shape your future. You have the power to choose differently. You can be the person who says what they mean and means what they say, who builds instead of tears down, who solves problems instead of collecting grievances. You can be the person Machiavelli would have trusted, because that ultimately is the greatest victory of all. Not just recognizing the manipulator in your midst, but refusing to become one yourself. The choice, as always, is yours. But choose carefully, choose wisely. Because in the corridors of power, in the quiet moments between meetings, in the spaces where careers are made and destroyed, Machiavelli is still watching, and he sees everything.